Chapter 30A, Section 20B, following Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency in the Commonwealth arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. The advisory committee will meet virtually utilizing Zoom technology. All votes will be taken by roll call vote. We'll call the roll to open the meeting. Jeanne Astino.
Present.
I see you. It must be sufficient. Fran Collins.
Present.
Jeanne Healey.
Present.
Lee Jenkins. Oh, not yet. Helene Lieb.
Present. Here.
Mary McGoldrick.
Present.
Meg Wheeler.
Present.
And Rob Hillman is present. So we're open. So our agenda items for this portion of the meeting, which oddly we're on time because we were supposed to start with the select board at 7 o'clock. We didn't start till 7:30, but is a review and vote on open warrant articles, including not limited to the budget articles, which really means Article 5 in its entirety. Discussion matters for upcoming meetings, which means what's on the agenda for Thursday. Approval of minutes, and I believe Jeanne has circulated 3 sets of minutes at a minimum, so we can vote those. And I am there were some materials circulated, for example, about the open item for the CPC approval of the softball field, which would be a fill-in for Article, whichever one it is, the CPC Article 14. We could do that perhaps, but it seems to me that the first thing we should do is discuss whether or not we're going to spend 50 million bucks by approving the Article 4. And which we've had multiple presentations on over multiple meetings. I think the best way to do that would be to get a motion in a second and then have a conversation. So unless anybody disagrees, I think if we could get a motion.
Rob, you have a question. You have a question from Don. A hand up from Don.
Oh, I'm sorry, Don. I didn't see that. Go ahead.
No, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to note for CPC, you can vote that. There is going to be one additional item on there, but what they had missed was the annual debt service payment.
Okay, maybe we
piece
should
of
wait.
property.
We'll just wait till Thursday. I think that'll be short, and I'd rather have it. Would it make sense to do that with everything in front of us?
I think so. Again, it's a general. We have a couple more years on the debt that was committed to a piece of property over on King Street. As they were going through all their votes over the last few meetings, they just omitted that. So it will be one more item. You could vote it now, but it's going to come back to you with that one more item. So it's up to you. I just wanted to make you guys aware that there will be one more piece related to CPC.
Thank you. Let's get the budget up and down, and then we'll see if there's anything else we can do this evening that's productive. We do have a brief presentation on Thursday, or actually possibly 2 brief presentations, but it's going to be our lightest lift of the last month or so. So we'll see what makes more sense, and I'll do whatever the sense of the committee is. But I think it would make sense to get a motion. Will the advisory committee vote to recommend that town meeting adopt Article 5 in the form that it appears in the current draft warrant? Does anybody want to make that motion? I saw Mary's hand. Second. I saw Helene's hand. So as I said, as you all know, we've had a series of budget presentations culminating in this evening. I thought that even though they were a few weeks ago, I thought the presentations from the departments, having the sizable chunk of the town budget plus Don and Chris's presentations were comprehensive, and we had a good chance to dig in. I realize I do apologize for being a little scrambled at the capital budget meeting. I was trying to move too fast, and a couple of things got away from me, not the least of which were my notes. But also it occurred to me that apart from the school capital budget items, all of the other capital budget items had been in front of us by department. So the DPW's various pieces of equipment and the police and fire department's pieces of equipment, we actually took 2 swings at. So I guess, comments, anything concerning the approval of the budget article. Has anybody got anything they want to put in the mix? Mary?
Don, since you're here, this is great. I commend the schools for what they were able to do this year, because no doubt this was a super challenging year. I'm a little concerned going forward because I think there's, first of all, we don't see their budget really and dig in too much until they've already approved it themselves and they've met your number. And with the monies that they were able to receive from the CARES Act and so forth this year, and the amount of positions that are fluctuating between teachers that have left because the year was just crazy and they needed to go educate their own children. We just really have to be able to pay attention next year. And even that said, I don't know how much impact we're going to have. But it's really, I feel like we got a lot of really good data on the town side. And thank you for that. And a real comprehensive understanding. And, 3 of us have been on the school committee here. But there were just a lot of moving pieces. And I feel a little bit like it was a bit of a chess game. And so, I don't know.
I agree with you. It's been a little challenging, I'm sure, with the schools. I've worked with Susan a bit between a bunch of their grants. One thing that, again, I think for what they had available on short notice, it covered a lot. One thing that I just want to make you aware of, and I think we've talked about this before, was just, hiring people through grants and then kind of not sliding them in secretively by any means, but the technology director is brand new, funded by a grant. Now, when you look at the line item detail, you're going to see technology director, 122,000, and an increase of 50. It's really an increase of 122, because this year it was a budget amendment. They had to fund, basically the grant initially came in from the CARES, and the initial time frame was only through December. So they budgeted 0.4 in the grant, and then they had to come up with the other 72 in their budget. So they made whatever budget movements they needed to. So when you kind of look at it year over year, that's just one area, like we've talked about before, just trying to watch that. But I don't remember seeing that specifically in that breakout of increases or decreases of FTEs. I would have expected, that's a $50,000 increase technically from year over year. It's really 122 when you look at them trying to take that fully into the budget for this year. And that's just one. And I literally just got that detail today, so I've only had maybe 30 minutes to look at it before the meeting started. But I agree. I think it's something that we have to pay attention to and really understand going forward. I don't know if I want to say it's lucky or not. On the town side, we don't really deal with that as much. We've had some assistance to firefighter grants, but we've really paid attention to that, and we phased that. It was a multi-year grant. We phased their salaries in over time. We built that money into the budget, so when the grant came due, we'd be able to fund them if there was an appetite from the town. But as you know, from a school department, they're very autonomous with their budget. So as Rob mentioned, I think maybe we could come up with a better system to help the advisory committee really review their budget every year and really have the data ahead of time in front of you, be able to analyze it and really come up with good questions and that would make you guys feel comfortable.
Jeanne, Fran, Helene.
I do have to say that I requested, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I had requested their budget information around the time of their public hearing. And I did get some information, but it was nowhere near complete. It didn't even have that summary page included. And that was the one that I wanted to see because I glanced at it on the screen and thought, oh, I want to look at that. And so I asked for all of the information and it wasn't included. So maybe we need to make them aware that next year, when we request budget information, we expect the full detail with the overview. I don't think
Thanks.
anybody's ever asked for that before. I mean, I certainly was never asked for it in the 10 years that I was sitting in that room. So I think that we just have to be clear on what we're looking for and when we would like to receive it. I mean, there's a nice way to say it.
Jeanne, just to respond to that real quickly before going on to the other questions. I've had conversations, and I think Mary has had conversations separately with Chris and the board and the select board about moving the beginnings of this process a good deal earlier. And I ask people for documents professionally, and
I do collections.
there you go, perfect. But your documents have pictures of presidents on them. But in all seriousness, we should really think about dialing the calendar back into the late fall and get a sense among ourselves of what we want and make the ask earlier. I think this year is a wash for a variety of reasons. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but to your precise point, is next year going to be different? Yeah, it is, and it has to be. Fran, then Helene.
Yeah, my question is, you basically just went all over it, but when you get all this information, an hour before the meeting,
Yeah, it's
when you try to read it off the computer screen or print it out like I did, it's a waste of time and effort.
that's not
You
helpful.
don't know what you're looking at.
It is. There is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to answer your question again because I can't restrain myself. But my job in the advisory committee is not to be a lawyer, but my firm represents school committees. It's most of our it's maybe half of what we do. And the one thing that we do know is that in Massachusetts, the school committee gets a lump appropriation and nobody but the school committee gets to talk about the allocation of that, other than to advise them, which is what we do. So I think that, on the one hand, people maybe have fallen into a habit, I know since I've been on the advisory committee, of getting a slide deck and being told, here are our priorities and here's what we did. But there are, I think, getting involved earlier and getting some of the details so we can help them by asking questions. For example, when they say, oh, look, we dug in, we didn't want to lay anybody off, which is fine, which is great. We dug in and we found $100,000 in savings in materials and supplies. A more cynical public servant might say, last year we wasted $100,000 in unnecessary use of provisions and supplies. Hey, there's two sides of those kinds of coins. So I think getting into the numbers a little earlier and applying people's very substantial experience to getting the questions out there while they can still be included in a budget document. We were presented with a budget document that's already been voted. Hard stop. So I'm frustrated by its meaninglessness, as I think are you. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Helene, go ahead.
I'm not good. Well, John Chapman, back about 5 years ago, I think and then I got on, I think the year after he did, we really worked towards getting it early and it worked out much better. The whole thing was that advisory was coming in way too late into the process. So John had a schedule. We had people coming in, like you said, in late fall. It was click, click, click. And so I think we need to get back to that. I think what happened, the COVID changed it. We were making progress and then it kind of slipped back. So you have to stay on top of it, or otherwise, the various committees, the various departments aren't going to give you that info because we did get it earlier in the past. I don't know if it was a specific request to the school committee per se, but we definitely had data from the schools earlier. And they presented, to the advisory earlier. And they just presented to us. We did combine it with the select board. I don't think that's the problem, but it was much earlier. And I agree with Mary. I think we really have to watch next year. You guys, I won't be here.
Jean, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I saw Jeanne Astino's hand. Oh, and Jean Healey's hands are Jean Healey, then Jeanne Astino.
Yeah, just to echo what everyone is saying. I mean, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, I do this for a living. I do examination, investigation, and prosecution on behalf of the federal government. And in that context, what we do is we actually have a very strict process laid out in terms of timelines, as well as the content of information that you expect to be brought before you to allow that time. And it's standardized across the board. You have a clear manual, and every institution knows what the deal is. And I think that, I don't know if that's within our ability to require that at the end of the day, particularly given the school issue, Rob, right? But it is an incredibly effective process to the extent everyone gets in the habit of doing it year after year, including if, again, there's a manual and, there's just sort of required timelines as well as expectations of what people are providing. Because, I mean, as you all saw from last week, I do not feel comfortable really weighing in on big things unless I have time to digest and really, fully consider and look through and dive in. And that was my expectation of what I thought advisory committee was supposed to do, and have that time and information to do that, and not just make decisions on the fly. So I suppose I'm agreeing with all of you, but also suggesting maybe there's some sort of structured process that can be put in place, akin to what Helene was talking about.
I suspect that, I'm sorry, somebody else started to talk. I suspect that that's kind of our next order of business after, we take a little bit of time to regroup after getting ready for this town meeting, and then really look hard at, best practices, earlier timeframes, and ways to go forward. For example, we had put together, Tom Baker had put together just a face sheet for each group coming before the advisory committee with the basic information about their budget situation and their ask for the upcoming year. And it was enormously helpful. And we saw a couple of those get revived in this cycle, but that's the sort of thing, less than a manual perhaps, but better than, but it was a useful tool. Anyone else?
I just
Lee,
want one quick thing.
hang on.
Yeah, I could
Go
share.
ahead, Helene.
I could share with you, Rob, what John came up with, and then later that following year, what I did when it came to helping him. But he instituted the schedule, and I'll share that with you. I'll find it somewhere,
Thank you. That
Okay.
would be helpful. I
No
saw Lee has not spoken yet. I saw his hand, and Jeanne.
Just want to back up Fran when he said, I think we only got the information a half an hour before a $21 million budget.
Yeah.
It's a joke. How can we approve something a half an hour before they release it? It's a joke.
Jeanne Astino.
As you know, I was the chair for several years on the school committee, and we implemented a procedure where we would have regular budget updates as the process started to develop. And we would have this, I think it was like the second meeting of the month, we would have an update on what the next steps were and what we were looking at. And then the day after the meeting, we would post the draft budget on the school website. So it was clearly marked draft. It was in no way, shape, or form the final product, but it was very effective in answering questions from people. So maybe we should have a conversation with the superintendent and the finance area in town and just suggest that we start back along that path. Those discussions started around November.
Yes.
Now,
Those-
this year was very odd. So, and I didn't even get approved to be on this committee until I kept waiting and waiting and waiting and couldn't participate in anything. Jeanne was in the same situation. We
I had no
didn't have
idea.
appointment letters until late.
Uh,
So,
I
Just
had
a
to
couple
do
of
the
things. I
dance
think
to get that
Mary had her hand up, but quickly, Jean, to your point, and Mary may say this herself in 2 seconds. Those conversations have already started. And I think we should sort of digest the fact that we're here and talk a little bit about what we need to do next. But
Right.
Mary McGoldrick.
Yeah, I was very surprised as I went looking, once we got all our liaison assignments on the school committee website, that there was absolutely nothing there in the budget. And a lot of this, I do think you have to chalk up to this year. And, but that's why I really do think we need to pay even more attention next year. And this conversation needs to start even earlier, just in terms of, let's maybe relook at those percentages again on the divide. I think we kind of, especially if we're looking at funding, if the town agrees to go forward with this $750,000 for the town hall, and then all the belts are going to need to be tighter. I think you got to just really look at everything again.
Thank you, Jean Healey.
Yeah, so just to weigh in on the substance of the school budget, one of my concerns is just the incredible variability that's going on this year. I brought up the enrollment numbers, but I don't know if anyone noticed in Deer Hill where my kids are, the numbers just went like this. There was like 50 kids that never showed up, but most of them plan to come back. And I'm just not sure. I know a lot of them. I'm not sure if that's fully accounted for in the school budget and how that is necessarily going to play out. There were, in fairness to the schools, there were teachers that literally just quit, like in the middle of the school, just left all of a sudden. And so they were scrambling to try to address the situations. So there was a lot of weirdness going on, I think, because of the pandemic. But I'm not sure that will necessarily stop next year. So I'm not sure there's an answer for it, but I'm a little worried that maybe the issue is that they haven't necessarily projected with the enrollment. And I also think there's going to be a lot of special education demands on them because, so just to give the parents' perspective on that, the remote learning situation has really exacerbated children who are on IEPs because they have not been in school. The vast majority who are on IEPs are not necessarily getting the instruction they would have otherwise gotten. And so there's going to be, I think, a backlog of issues that the school is going to have to deal with. So just again, on the substance, there's no answer or crystal ball for all that, but I am flagging that there's going to be variability. The thing that I do want to flag is exactly what Mary said with the town hall issue and how that relates to this year's overall operating budget for Article 5. The school air handlers, not to be a broken record, but that's important to the safety of the kids in the schools. I mean, we've huge amounts of kids and teachers and staff in the schools that still need safe air. And so I don't know if the plan is to approve the budget, how the capital budget approvals of the air handlers comport with the plan for financing for the town hall and where that shakes out in the budget. I think for me, that's important to know because I really want to make sure the schools are able to get that safety equipment.
Don, do you have can you address that?
Sure. Could you repeat?
I see them as entirely separate, but
Yeah, I
you
didn't
know more
quite
than I do.
understand the question. Could you just repeat that and maybe I can shed some light?
Sure. So last Thursday, when we were talking about the town hall, capital budget had already approved $750,000 purchase of the air handlers for the entire school system. But then the idea was, well, let's take the air handlers. Let's take that money that was slotted for the air handlers and apply it to the town hall project.
I gotcha. No, so
I hope that we get grants for the air handlers.
no, well, so capital budget approved the money, 750 for all of it. So that is happening no matter what.
Okay.
What we discussed is as hopefully a funding source is to go after alternative funding for those items. So capital budget approved them. We
Okay.
have proof that they've approved them. I'm actually going to be on a meeting tomorrow with Michelle Leary with MSBA to understand where we are in the process, what we can expect, and I believe get some more information. So between that and maybe some of the federal money, we're going to be getting related to this new ARPA legislation, using that to basically repurpose the funds to these grants, and then we would repurpose the capital money to town hall. It's really just again, that was just one of our financing options, just to explain how we could reduce the overall project borrowing, and that was just one of them. So I
So
guess
we're gonna buy
to
it.
summarize, we are 100% funding the air handlers. That will happen.
Okay,
If we get these grant opportunities, we will essentially switch the funding source from capital stabilization funds
okay.
and use the grant opportunities that we may get, which would free up that capital budget money to potentially put towards the town hall. I
Okay.
know it's kind of round in circles, bit of a
I understand.
shell game, but
Okay.
you have to approve the project. And as you mentioned, the air handlers are important pieces of equipment to all our schools. So it gets funded first, and normally that's how you would do it, is you get the approval. And a lot of the MSBA, things like that, they want to see the approval process anyway, I believe, so that they see that you're committed to these projects. And then they do their thing on how they approve what portion or what percentage gets funded.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so again, the motion that we're discussing really is to approve the overall budget with the school portion of it placed in it. As I said, well, actually, let me ask one question, Don, and if this is going to be too long an answer, it's something we can take up when we talk about things more systematically. But I asked a question during the joint meeting that I sort of intended to explore the idea of how the school budget number is, the school business administrator's name escapes me, said, the number we were assigned. And I know from conversations with Chris and sort of generally that there's a kind of an iterative process, and as you described it, kind of an unwritten but accepted piece of traditional breakdown of 31 3961 or whatever it is. But it sounds as if there's a process and a number comes out of kind of a formula based on projected revenues, a division of new growth projected revenues out of the prior year, and there's a number, and that number is $21,600,000. And it sounds to me, and the former members of the school committee can correct me if I'm wrong, but that the school committee builds its budget to that number. And then it says, if we had more money, here are the 8 other things we'd like, although I've seen more of that in other years than this year, to kind of shame everyone into agreeing that they're actually giving us a really good deal. And I'm not saying they're not, but am I conceptualizing it that the right way?
Yes.
There's this pot of money and then they grow their budget to that
Yeah, it's
pot.
a zero-based budget. We build it from zero up to the top.
So if there's good new growth money, then it sort of we have a process, an overall budgeting process in town that allocates that money and makes it available for someone to say, not that it's not an important budget priority, but if somebody wants to say, let's spend $150,000 on a technology director, hey, look, there's the money because we've got new growth money. Am I wrong? Or is that kind of, is that kind of what we're doing here, is putting money on the table and saying, come up with a reason to use it? Or is that just a grossly unfair question?
But yes, so you're right about the whole process. We go through, we do the forecasting, we come up with what that new estimated revenue would be. It gets added, and then this is the total school available budget as of that point in time. I usually talk with the business manager. What we've done in the past, we would meet with myself, Chris, the business manager, and the superintendent, to say, we're at the end of December, based on our current projections, this is where we are. And this is what we have allocated based on that 6139, where the town departments and where the school has. And then we have a discussion. Where are you? What are you looking to do? What are your needs? Again, as Jeanne Astino mentioned, it's zero based. They start from zero, look at what their actual roll forward of salaries are first.
Contractual
Then they have,
obligations.
then they have a level of kind of needs for the district, and then another level of wants.
Yeah.
So they kind
get
of
that,
they
although-
know what their percentage of carryover is for their
Although I
salaries.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but, and I don't want to like drag this out all night because it's an interesting conversation. The immediate acceptance of the salary line as an immutable constant is going to be trouble someday. The school budget increased at a clip of 3.5% in a world where, there are caps on how much you can grow revenue. And and I know school departments do it, but to say, well, we don't have any choice, but we have to do this because we have these contractual salary obligations. Those get revisited every third year. And while it is the school committee's place to engage in collective bargaining with its union, I think they need to be mindful that it is the biggest single variable line in the town budget, I think, is their Unit A contract.
I'll tell you.
But that's a conversation for another day, I think.
Just so
But
you,
go ahead.
sorry, Rob. Just so when we started that conversation, 3.6% was their salary rollover percent. Their total budget increase based on their contractual obligations. Luckily, they had, as they showed, about $140,000 in savings of retirements, which helped, I believe, offset those contractual obligations. So you're right, a big,
it could have been worse.
Portion is just
without,
the base.
you're absolutely right. Without some fortuitous retirements, we would have had, a 3.6%, 3.7%. I'm not, I want a good school system. It's just, there's a number above which it's not sustainable. And that's why I think this plan to get involved in the process earlier, as several of you have said, and I think all of us agree, to get in the process earlier so that somebody can be whispering or speaking or yelling this in appropriate ears, just to be careful. That's all. Go ahead, Jeanne. And then Mary.
I should know the answer to this and I don't, so I'm just going to ask it as bluntly as I can. Are the school staff, really I'm talking about teachers, getting the same percentage raise? And I realize this may be hard because of steps and all that, as let's say our town employees on the town side.
I can say that Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but every employee who's a member of a union gets whatever their union bargains with the town. Are they roughly the same? Yeah, I think so. But Don, am I
believe
right?
they're roughly the same, between 2.5%. The big kicker with the schools are the lane changes. You go from a master's plus 15, a master's plus 30, then you get in the CAGs, and it can skyrocket in 1 year.
You can have.
That's the real big budget busters when they move the lanes.
Yeah, if you have the whole salary line is going up 2% a year, and then people who are in steps, which is generally the first 10 years, are running up at another 2 or 3%. And then as they get graduate degrees, and they're all required to get at least one in the first 5 years, they shift through lanes. So you can have people making 12% year over year, which that'd be nice. But it's a universal constant with these kinds of contracts. But I don't want to go down that. There's a very substantial rabbit hole. But the answer to your question is that the base pay, what they call a cost of living adjustment, but it's an ATB. It's just an across the board raise, is roughly 2% a year across all collective bargaining agreements.
Yeah.
not just in Cohasset, in most similar towns. So, Don, I'm sorry.
No, I just think, you know, when I first started here, there was a long-range planning group. And I can't remember if they were appointments by select board, school committee, or if it was just, I forget how the group came about, but it was me and Chris, the superintendent, the school business manager, the vice chair and chair of capital budget advisory, I believe, select board. There was a group of people that when we started doing the forecast, we would meet and we talk about it. And you know, Chris and I would just explain where the numbers are coming from, what we're seeing, you know, having some of these conversations well up front and kind of during the process. And I believe that some people had left their committee or you know, superintendents changed. That just kind of went away. And I'm sure Chris would be open to starting that back up and kind of having a group together going through this in advance and kind of having these larger discussions well before, April 13th. And really having more input into the process. And again, we run with it. I'm pretty confident usually when we're going through the numbers if they're reasonable, but it's always good to have the opinions and the input from the committees to just either, you know, come up with a different perspective, or maybe they're reading a trend a little differently than we are. And I think it's just a good collaborative approach.
I agree. And I think that, you know, Chris is for that. We had a brief conversation just preparing for this evening, and we kind of got on that topic pretty quick. But, you know, I think just about everybody's made the point. Certainly Fran and Lee have that, you know, this isn't satisfying. But the only way we can't change it for this budget cycle, but we certainly can change it for the next one. And I think we're going to. So go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say that, and you may have been just about to say this, this year, I think the train has left the station clearly, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. But I would just suggest that perhaps you, Rob, when we do make our recommendation for the budget this year, that there are a few words dedicated to, in some way, how next year will be different.
We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes about how we're going to make statements at town meeting. I think it's something we'll probably address Thursday a little bit more detail, but yes, and yes. Can I suggest, I mean, I'm not really permitted to move the question, but I would certainly entertain a motion if somebody wanted to move the question.
Rob, there's a motion on the floor.
That's it. Shall we vote on it?
So
Does
Mary-
anybody have anything further? Does anybody have any? Go ahead, Jeanne.
I was just saying Mary moved, Helene seconded Article 5, if that's.
Right. Are we ready to vote?
Okay.
Has everybody had an opportunity to say what they need to say?
Yes.
All right, then thank you, Jeanne. That's what I was suggesting, that we vote the motion that I'm sure you've got locked up in the note in the minutes. So, and that's the motion to recommend the town meeting accept Article 5 in the form it appears in the current draft town warrant. Jeanne Astino,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Jean Healey,
Aye.
Lee Jenkins,
I
Lean Lieb.
saw her hand go up.
Okay. Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Okay, I got an aye from Helene in there too. Meg Wheeler
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. So it's 9:10. Why don't we move on to just looking at the agenda. In terms of discussion of matters for upcoming meetings, I understand we're likely to have two short presentations on Thursday. One has to do with solar panels, and that'll be Tanya Bodell. And the other had to do with the Affordable Housing Trust, an amendment to its instrument, which I'm led to understand is pretty much a formality of legal language. Don, does that comport with your, if you have an understanding, does that comport with your understanding of the things we have to do? Yes,
I believe
okay.
so. Yep.
We also need to, it sounds like there'll be a couple of CPC things. Mary circulated a CPC document relating to the softball field on behind the middle school. Strike that,
I
behind
think
the Deer
that-
Hill School.
Meg sent that around today.
Oh, Meg did? Oh, okay. I know we corresponded about should it be sent out. Thanks, Meg. I think we'll vote that along with the other matter. Since Don says that CPC has another matter that we need to vote on, we may as well do them together on Thursday. And that's all the loose ends I know of. So I was going to suggest that we have a little bit of a discussion, which I remember participating in as a member 2 years ago. Last year was fractured because I think at town meeting, Helene spoke briefly on the budget article, but we kept it short and didn't really address anything else. I think we should look at the articles that maybe require some comment and determine who's going to make that comment, and whether and to what extent we need to. I don't know that we necessarily need to script it, but in terms of making a statement on behalf of if it's going to be more than just we recommend the passage of, maybe we should kick that around a little bit. So that'll be a topic for Thursday. Yeah, Helene.
I was surprised just last year, we had the presentation, the combined meeting with the select board a month before this year. It was
That's
like,
right.
I have it written down, it was like March 17th, and what is today? April 13th. I mean, give me a break. It was like a month early.
I will say, I'm sorry, can I speak, Rob?
Yeah, no, please.
The reason this is being done so late, I believe, is because of the time of town meeting. There is a whole system in a number of weeks that budgets need to be presented to select board and everybody a number of weeks before annual town meeting. Normally, we would have annual town meeting at the end of April, and we're now at the end of May. So last year, we were doing all of these meetings in anticipation of an April town meeting, which then got bumped to June. So I
Into
did just
June,
want to
that's
make
right.
that comment that part of the reason why these have been later than normal is because
Exactly.
town meeting has been pushed off essentially a full month.
Yes, so that's what made the process just like go haywire.
Okay, so why don't we vote some minutes and then call it a night? Does that work for everybody? Cool. Jeanne, do you want to just identify which set of minutes we'll take them one at a time?
Sure. Let me I'm writing the minutes as I'm talking about the minutes. So let's see. Okay.
Chicken, egg, cart, horse.
So I tried to send them in one email just so everyone would have them quickly. We have 3 sets of minutes, starting with April 1st, April 6th, April 8th. The Thursday one actually needs to be revised to say the 8th. Maybe we just deal with one at a time. I realize the April 6th ones are a little weird because we had 2 meetings. subsumed.
Okay. Well, then why don't we take them one at a time? Can I have a motion that the advisory committee accept the draft minutes for the April 1st, 2021 meeting? Helene moves. Second, Lee. I'm sorry, Fran, I missed you. You can move next time. Any comment, any corrections? Hearing none, we'll need to vote by roll call. Jeanne Astino?
I was not present at that meeting.
Okay, abstain. Fran Collins?
Aye.
Jean Healey?
Aye.
Lee Jenkins?
Aye.
Helene Lieb?
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick?
Aye.
Meg Wheeler?
Aye.
And Rob Hillman is an aye. So, so then moving to the minutes of the 6th, that was a joint meeting followed by our own meeting. we can treat these, Jeanne, as one set of minutes, can't we? He says, hopefully.
I had them as
No?
separate, but then I combined them just for everyone's ease, but I'm
They
agnostic.
were I
people.
think they were the same meeting. We'll do them as one. And if the Attorney General's office comes after us, the sin on my head. Can I have a motion that the advisory committee accept the draft minutes of the April 6th meeting in both its parts?
So moved.
Fran
Second.
Collins, seconded by Jeanne Astino. Comment, questions, amendments? Hearing none. Votes, Jeanne Astino,
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Jean Healey.
Aye.
Lee Jenkins.
Aye.
Colleen Lieb.
I have to abstain because of the fact that I missed about 20 minutes of it.
Very good. Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. So moving on to the minutes of April 8th. Can I have a motion that the advisory committee accept the minutes?
It's
of,
April
our meeting?
6th. It's April 6th, not 8th.
I have to change that. It should be the 8th.
Oh,
It
right.
should be the 8th, so that'll be, okay,
Yes.
we'll just
As
treat it as
amended.
amended.
Just noted as amended.
Very good. I saw Lee moved second. Anybody?
I'll second.
Jeanne Astino. Okay, so one comment was, is correcting the date, which has already been done. Any other comments, questions, discussion?
Looks good to me.
Sounds good. Hearing none, vote, Jeanne Astino,
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Jean Healey.
Aye.
Lee Jenkins.
Aye.
Colleen Lieb.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
Aye.
And Rob Hillman is an aye. So we voted our minutes. We've discussed what we're going to do for the next meeting. We've already posted. I think our posting is open-ended enough to complete the work we need to do to be prepared for town meeting. So does anybody have anything? I don't even think I put if we had anything unanticipated in the last 48 hours on the posting. But does anybody have anything? Hearing nothing, can I have that other motion that everybody likes so much?
Motion to adjourn
Jean, second.
at 9:20.
Mary, okay. Vote by roll call. Jeanne Astino,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Jean Healey,
Aye.
Lee Jenkins.
Aye.
Colleen Lieb,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. Thank you very much. I'll